It was the bookies' favourite, George, that won out. The name George Alexander Louis traces its roots back through the royal bloodline, says royal historian Anna Whitelock.
They're names that have a royal pedigree. Certainly in the case of George, we've had 6 King Georges. Quite a motley crew. The first 4 were really more fond of, women, mistresses and playing cards.
Queen Elizabeth II, whose father was King George VI, visited her great-grandson Wednesday. Entire periods in British history are often identified by the name of the monarch, says royal observer Richard Fitzwilliams.
The name is actually very important because there's an extent to which you are defined in history by the name you choose. Therefore, there are limits. No one's going to choose the name, for example, of a king who was a disaster.
The more recent King Georges have been better role models, says Anna Whitelock.
George V was the founder of the House of Windsor. He very much sort of led the country through World War I, visited the troops on the front line, and of course the Queen's father, George VI, really kind of led the nation through World War II.
But Whitelock says the future king may not be known as George VII.
Prince Charles might indeed take the name George. That's certainly an option. George is one of his middle names. And monarchs in the past haven't always taken, when king, the name that they've been known for throughout their life.
Observers say that for previous generations of royal offspring, childhood was often isolated. William has repeatedly said he wants to give Prince George as normal an upbringing as possible at Kensington Palace. But it will, of course, be a childhood immersed in privilege and luxury, and that starts with furnishing the nursery. A short walk from the Cambridges' home at Kensington Palace, Dragons of Walton Street furnished nurseries for Princes William and Harry in the 1980s. Owner Lucinda Croft says the current fashion is for muted pastel colours, a dramatic change from the 80s.
They tended to be sort of like the clown palette, bright colours. So it's really changed, over these 30 years what's happening in nurseries. But obviously the ingredients are the same. You still need a cot, a chest of drawers, a changer and a nursing chair ideally.
It's got her looks, thankfully.
No. The royal couple has not hired a nanny, so the everyday routine that every parent knows of feeding and changing and the lack of sleep is something William, Kate and baby George will just be discovering. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Oh, we've done that already.
He's done the first already.
It's good.